Hey guys, what's up? Fulo Gold here. Just continuing my report on the Mount Misery diggings. Now, if you haven't seen my previous video, a couple of videos back, be sure to check that out. But there's just so much information in here, guys. Uh, it's just hard to pack all into one little package. So just where we are, we're sort of down here. Um, we're sort of looking in this region here. There are some diggings further down here as well, but really they're all over the place. But we're mainly looking in around here is a Mount Misery goldfields. Now, I got this newspaper article here, taken from 1856, so pretty early in the game. Now this this guy he takes a tour of inspection to the Mount Misery diggings. I was just going to read it to you because it just really puts you in his shoes. So, a tour of the inspection. uh, a profound philosopher, Carl Schinenbach. Now, this is all in here. This is the original newspaper printing, but somehow they could scan it and type it out like this. So, there might be a few mistakes there, or text errors, or by their text errors. Anyway, so he has observed in his light and cheerful work entitled Suggestions Toward the Analysis of the Mental Phenomena that the mind is the king and lord of the body, and he who well regulateth his mind will English was totally different back then. Will rather rejoice than mourn at physical suffering. So basically, if you can put your mind to anything, no matter how hard it is. That's basically what he's saying. With this profound remark of the German philosopher, I tried to console myself for my repulse at Brown Station. Brown Station is, if you're familiar with Smarsdale, you've got a road called Brown's Road, and used to be a station there, obviously, and also the diggings called Brown's Scarsdale diggings. It's pretty obvious. So he's really not impressed at the start. He says I tried to console myself for my repulse at Brown Station, and once more faced the rain and wind. So he's done it more than once. The road to Mount Misery here diverges to the left, and walking was very difficult, the soil being a rich, black mould in which my feet sunk. Not what you want to be doing. Here I again saw a little cultivated land, and the crops appearing to me in the first-rate condition. I met numerous parties of miners from Linton's, that's the Linton's diggings, making for the rush at the three huts. From all whom I met the greatest courtesy. This remark applies to the whole of my journey. The miners were all in attendances, civil and obliging, answering all my queries with politeness, and often putting themselves to considerable trouble to show me the road. Now, this is something really interesting. Often we hear how bad it was living on the diggings, like the violence. There's a Eureka Stockade that happened. But you got to remember, the world was totally different back then. Yes, there was lawlessness, but a majority of people, they were pretty decent people. Like standards were pretty high, moral was pretty high back then. And of course, when everyone's, we have this rush going on, people trying to grab their little bit of gold. But this is after, you'll find out when I read on that. There are some diggings in the neighbourhood of Brown Station which I did not visit, as I had previously received authentic information of what was doing there, what was going on there. Very few miners are left, the greater portion being attacked with the rushing mania. So that's the initial gold rush. One or two parties doing well at surfacing. My road, which which had up to this point been across a level country, now began to be hilly, and I discern the usual signs of golden country in the quartz tread road. Along this road I travelled in search of the township of Rokewood, the nearest township to Mount Misery, and here committed the capital error of my journey. Hitherto all had gone smoothly, but allured by the charms of the broad track on the opposite side of the creek, I rashly crossed and commenced the pleasing operation of turning my back to the place that I wished I had reached. I was first awoke to of my indiscretion by the track be a sense fainter, until at last I ran, coming fainter and plump against my face. Okay. My worst fears were confirmed. I had been following for miles the track to a station, to which now made my way, in search of information. Despite the maxims of the learned Shannonbeck, and dinner offer more moment than a solution of psychological problems. Okay, I here learned that I was farther off from the end of my journey. You could have just said that. Okay. I might just skip a bit further. He goes, the road soon ankle deep in sand. That doesn't sound too appealing. He goes, okay, the sun had broken through the clouds. Birds began to recover their spirits. So obviously he's here at the wrong time of the year. It's wet, muddy, winter. Okay. I felt the sort of Columbus. As I proceeded, the path grew fainter and the bush denser, and that's typical for that country there. As you get further into the Mount Misery, it gets really steep. Never before in the bush had I felt a sense of loneliness, but here, surrounded by tall trees, I felt cut off from the world. The solitude was dense, deep, impenetrable. I could scarce respire freely amidst the thick trees. I longed for the open plain and extended view. At last I caught sight of the broken ground which proclaimed diggings at hand. Once more I felt at home. Descending a steep hill, I found myself in Kangaroo Gully, and in the presence of some half-dozen Chinese. So there's not a lot of people here at the moment. I asked for Rokewood. Their replies were no doubt explicit, but unfortunately unintelligible. Remember, a lot of these migrants came in, didn't know English. So you can imagine the scene. We've got this professor here, speaks English, Chinese over here. He further says, at last he found an Englishman, apparently the last man of this gully. Lucky him. Who gave me very elaborate directions to my place of destination, which I endeavoured to follow, determined that there should be no mistake this time. Roads! Where is the rash mortal who says this colony is destitute of roads? It was a very corroboree of roads. Okay. It was the old puzzle of Rosamund's Bower. Okay. He was pretty happy for roads, I guess. Yeah. Okay. There wasn't a steady, straightforward road amongst them all, just like how you describe things, mate. I have been used to roads that know where they are going and go, but the roads I now was doomed to seem to have no intention of going anywhere. So basically, they go wherever. He stood bewildered, puzzled. Was Rokewood the famous land of Prince John, or the Isle of Atlantis? I stood on the summit of a high range. Below me, a deep gully lay in impenetrable gloom. Not a sound not a sound, not so much as the cry of a bird. On every side, thick, close underwood. Okay. My view was bounded by an immense range that seemed moulded in colossal calm. I felt a sense of diminished importance. My little body, with all its hopes and fears, was but a small item in the great account of nature. There was nothing for it but to advance, so on I went, the sinking sun casting my lengthened shadow on my path. Oh, Professor, I would have renounced all the philosophy for the comfortable tea in bed. You don't get that when you're camping out there, mate. Okay, well, we get the point. We'll just fast forward here. He's at the diggings now. He saw at a glance at the diggings. It was not very brisk here. Nobody seemed in a hurry. All were quiet. Steady going, folks. So the rush was basically over. However, sundry physical phenomena were not to be overlooked, and I commenced a search for supper and bed. Good on you, mate. You deserve it after that trek. I was far beyond the region of restaurants and hotels where things unknown here. I therefore had to trust myself to the hospitality of the miners, and was soon comfortably seated by a good fire, partaking of the usual digging fare, chops and potatoes. Yeah, you can't knock that. Chops and potatoes, and they would have been good good lamb. They would have been freshly slaughtered. None of this go to Safeway, Woolies. You don't know how old that is. Oh, tough as old boots. But they would have been. Oh, those guys had good tucker back then. I'm telling you. So here we are, Mount Misery. The name of these diggings is by no means inviting, as we obviously just saw. It's a pain to get there. These diggings have been known for some time and do not seem ever to have been thoroughly prospected. Interesting. The ranges look splendid, and I should conjecture that there is some good surfacing, and we have seen that there has been some surfacing action done. Passed over a number of large quartz reefs in the neighbourhood. Yep, I've seen them. The principal diggings are in a gully at the foot of the ranges, and I think I can show you where we're talking about here. Yeah, here we go. Enfield State Park. That's it, all it around here. The majority of it. Okay. So the principal diggings are in a gully at the foot of the range. Yep. Mount Misery. The principal portion of the population is Chinese, who are reported to have been doing first rate by dint of constant sinking, often succeeding well in spots where Europeans would not work. Okay, that's interesting. I think it's known that the Europeans were a little bit lazy, or the Chinese worked harder than others and more thoroughly. Many of them are said to have quietly made their pile and returned home from this place. Now that makes sense. If I was in the gold rush era, rather than hearing the latest news of a new gold field and rushing out, I'd rather just stick to the one spot, even though it might not be as rich, but you work it enough, it all adds up. But of course it needs to be rich enough to pay for your way. The whole of this district is a succession of gullies, ranges, thickly timbered, often rising to an immense height, so it is very difficult to tell the population or what is being done. There are said to be at least 100 gullies at present in work. I visited a few of which may be taken as types of rest. Okay, so not every gully was worked, just lived on. That's interesting about how thickly timbered it is. Although this is in 1856, so we haven't begun the deep mine shafts, which a lot of the timber went in. So that's interesting to know that there's still a lot of thick timber untouched by man at that point. Yeah, so I think I'll stop there. Very interesting. Now you know. Now we know where. I don't know how I just highlighted that. Well, that's handy. Now we know where the Mount Misery name comes from. This professor seemed like he had a hell of a time getting there. So there you go, guys. If you want to support me on YouTube, there's a number of ways you can. You can always subscribe, it's free. Always leave a comment if you feel feeling up to it. Try to answer them as much as I can, but I really appreciate you guys stopping in. And here's one of them there. Surfing Prospector. Good on you, mate. Maybe I should do a call out of whoever comments at the end of each video. So far, I might only have about 2 call outs to do now. Okay, guys, this is Fulo Gold. Thanks for tuning in again. We'll see you in the next one.
When first I left old England shore, such yarns as we were told, as how folks in Australia could pick up lumps of gold. So when we got to Melbourne town, we were ready soon to slip and get even with the captain and scuttle from the ship. With his swag upon me shoulder, Black Billy in me hand, I travel the bush of Australia like a true born native man.